Welcome to our home. I'm Pamela Burton, Jeremy Smithson. We're owners of Puget Sound Solar. And we bought our home 23 years ago. And when we first looked at this place, it was very different. You'll see some of the pictures to show that. But one of the things we talked about right away was using the space to do some really wonderful gardens, including edibles. We want to be able to grow as much of our food as possible. I started out as the executive director of Seattle Tilth, so I learned a lot about organic gardening. Love to show you our worm bin and our mason bees and our chickens.
And I'll show you the house, which we started out spending a lot of money on energy, but eventually turned it into a net zero home. So we'll show you the things that we did along the way to create that, which includes a lot of energy efficiency and insulation, which were the early projects, and then moving on to solar energy and more efficient appliances, and a lot of details. So stay tuned. So we'll start with the house and what we did to it to make it more efficient, more comfortable, and just more livable. And we'll progress from there to the things around the house. So this picture shows, on the left is what the house looked like when we bought it, and on the right what it looks like today. So you can see there's some few changes going on there, but they were really kind of consistent with the original design of the house. So you can see on the left, upper left there, in 1937, the house had big roof overhangs, and there was an open porch on the southwest side there. And by 1958, it looked quite a bit different. It had sidewall shingles, and the roof overhangs had been cut off, and that porch was enclosed. And when we got it, it kind of pretty much looked the same, except it had some aluminum windows instead. So we took that porch design and recreated it on the north side of the house, and did a small addition to give us a little more space. And then we also turned the roof into a gable roof to make room for solar panels. So here's another view of the progress of that. And as you can see, it was over a number of years. But basically, most of the work took place in 2 to 3 years. It was really 2 years, and I think we finally painted it in 2005 or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's been a long project that we're still working on. The front stairs came off, and then we opened up the pony walls and discovered there wasn't a lot of framing down there. So those got reframed. On the left, you can see it was just some 6x6 posts and a bunch of random 2x4s. So we completely replaced that and tied it down with seismic anchors and insulated. That original insulation you can see on the left there, that yellow stuff, that was R7. So we actually kept that, but we added 2 layers of R13. And that was reclaimed insulation that we got at what was then Restore and is now Ballard Reuse. A really good resource for reclaimed building materials. So now we have R34 walls downstairs. Actually, I think there are R30 down here and R34 upstairs. The aluminum windows, we replaced those with actually reclaimed vinyl windows that we got at Second Use Building Materials. They were really a good find because they were a lot of the same size that we were able to use in our existing window openings. And they were low E, argon filled, dual glazed units, so pretty nice windows. The installation that we did was unusual in that we did the 2x4 walls with cellulose, but then on the inside, right over the old plaster and lath, we put R19 foil-faced foam insulation, And that really increased the value of the insulation value of the wall, but it also cut the thermal bridging at the studs and brought the corners in so that there's less heat leaking out at the corners. And in general, just made a huge difference. On the north side, where we did the addition, you can see on the left picture here, we put that same insulation over R21 batch. So the north wall, for the most part, is R40. Upstairs in the attic, we did R57 with about 2 feet of cellulose. So here's detail on that foam installation over the plaster and lath. We used 5-inch drywall screws to stitch all that in, and it worked great. The trim, we were able to, this house had no trim in it when we bought it. Somebody had taken all the trim out. So we recreated what we think, that 1908 window looked like. We were able to get period casing and some other parts like picture rail and cove molding. Most of that we got down at Restore. And we were kind of able to fake the other parts to put together the lintel and the sill and make it look like it was an old window. Here's some detail on the heating system. We have a complicated mechanical corner that includes the domestic hot water, including the solar input for that and the solar storage for that. And there, in addition to that, there's another water heating tank that is just for space heating. We reduced the heat load of the house by 2/3. So we were able to heat the entire house with just an electric water heater. And in 2013, we replaced that with a heat pump water heater, which cut the electric usage in half again. So really kind of remarkable progression with the heating load. Here's how we did the loops in the floor. Those are 1/2-inch PEX tubing that we just used conduit clips to clip up to the, or to screw up to the subfloor. The ceiling downstairs, we painted the back of the drywall flat black so it would absorb that radiation faster, because this system radiates both ways. And that's why there's so much tubing in each one of those joist cavities. Normally you'd only have maybe 2 tubes. But in this case, we have more heat flux where it's going up and down at the same time. This it's remarkably efficient and comfortable now. And you can see that infrared picture in the center showing the basement ceiling and the walls. The walls are purple and the ceiling is yellow because the ceiling is producing a lot of heat. And that actually radiates to the floor. So the floor warms up due to the fact that the radiant loops are in the ceiling. Pretty cool. In the bedroom, we did loops in the wall because we didn't want to heat that part of the basement below the bedroom. And in this case, we put those loops over some of that foil-faced insulation so we don't cook the dining room. And that actually reflects the heat back into the bedroom really well. So this thing heats up instantly, and you can't really tell where the heat's coming from, but it's very comfortable. We used a blower door to measure the leakage in the house. And the first time we did it, we were kind of surprised because there was a lot of leakage. And there were things that we just didn't think about when we did our remodel. So we went back and plugged up some of those places. And then we came back and did a blower door test again with a thermal camera and found leakage in places that we couldn't see. So for instance, there was a cold line along the basement wall where you could see the cold air was coming in behind that wall where the pony wall meets the foundation. So things like that. There was a blower door, a pocket door that was leaking air out of the pocket. And that's because it was coming in from a part of the ceiling that was open to the outside. So there were things we couldn't see that we found with that thermal camera. Amazing. And we got it to this point. which for this size house is right about where you want to have some mechanical ventilation. And actually our heat pump water heater provides that, oddly enough. But tightened up the house. You can see how much tighter we got it. This is a winter day, and the left is our house, and you can see the purple walls mean that there's not a lot of heat coming out of there. They're cold because they're just not receiving much from the inside. You can see the window frames, and the glass is where the heat is really coming out of our house. Our next door neighbor's house, not so much. The walls and the windows, everything are radiating quite a bit more heat. So a good way to test to see how well we did our insulation work. Here's some other shots. This one upper left is another house in the neighborhood where you can really see that thing leaking. On the upper right, that's a picture of our dining room wall, and the dots are the screw heads, those 5-inch drywall screws I was telling you about, because that's the only thing that's really transferring heat through that wall. Plus in the corner where you typically get some leakage. And here's another detail of insulation we did downstairs. Air sealing with foam along the pony wall, and then we did vapor barrier. I think that was existing actually. And then we put 2-inch R14 polyiso board over that. Here's where the energy goes in our house. I love these Sankey diagrams because it really makes it visual. All the yellow arrows on the left there is solar coming from various resources. So we have the big PV system on the roof making 6,000 kilowatt hours a year. The small system on the garage actually produces about 700 to 800 a year. The patio roof in the 500 to 600 kilowatt hour range. Our hot water system makes about 1,800 kilowatt hours. That's based on the usage for a two-person household. And we get a lot of passive solar heating, and we've actually modeled that. Well, when we did the design work on the house, we used a program that models the heat loss and the solar gain. And we ran the model with all the windows shaded, and it took 25% more energy to heat the house. So we're getting about 25% of our space heating from the sun coming through the windows, and that's that passive heat figure there. So all of those yellow arrows really kind of neatly equal the red and purple and so forth on the other side where we're using that. And you can see those figures on the right. Those are all from the monitoring system we have, so we know where all that energy is going. And then down below, you've got the grid power coming in, but it's really only coming in to supply 2 electric cars. And hopefully someday we'll have enough production on the house to be able to make that up too. But this is something you can do at your house. There are all these things that we've been doing here. There's probably some of those you can do. So just want to encourage you to ask questions if you've got any. And Stu, have we got any questions coming up while we've been doing this?
Not in this last little chunk, no. I mean,
okay.
The ones that I've gotten some emails, I've gotten contact with people, but no, nothing, nobody's throwing any hands up. But do feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll try to get to them really quick for you. But I'll just fire off the next little chunk that you want to go through.
All righty. Before we put any solar electric systems on this house, we installed a solar hot water system. And we use these Thermomax evacuated tubes to do it. This collector was actually 16 years old before we installed it in 2002. So it's quite old and still working great. We've had to replace a couple of tubes because they lost their vacuum. But this is actually the most efficient collection we have on the house. These collectors are about 70% efficient. If you compare that to the sun power panels that we just put on the garage, those are about 20% efficient. So much better use of space with these. we put them on the south side of the house to leave room for PV on the roof, and also to help maximize what we get in the wintertime versus the summer. So our philosophy here was really built around reducing energy on the one hand and also producing, and hopefully get them to meet in the middle somewhere. So that meant that we looked at all the ways that we could do both of those things, and this is a funny example of that, or a fun example. Here's a picture window that in the afternoon is going to be sending sunlight into the room and heating the room, but it's the middle of summer and it's 80 degrees. Why would we want that? So rather than just put a plain awning over it, we installed this 102 watt PV module, and it produces energy for the yard lights and keeps the inside cool. Here's another example of dual use solar. This area, a little patio on the west side of the house, has a nice table, and we come out here and have dinner sometimes, but we weren't using it very much in the summer because it was just blistering hot here. And suddenly the light bulb went on. Well, we should have some kind of shade over it. Why don't we make those solar panels? So we installed these Silicon Energy solar panels in 2013, and that's another part of what helped to get us to net zero. In 2008, we were invited to try a new product by Outback Power Systems, and that was one of their inverter battery combinations. So we did install a SmartRe single inverter system in our garage with this small PV array powering it. That originally were different solar panels, and then we changed them again just yesterday to these 4 SunPower panels that will produce just about what the original array produced with 10 panels. So, because they spent some of the time in the shade. And we get to monitor online what's being produced and stored in the batteries, and so it's really pretty nice system. When we do get a power outage, which very rarely happens right here, this system powers our kitchen, basically just the fridge and the microwave, and it keeps our office going, and it keeps our solar hot water system going in case it happens to be during the daytime.
I'm always eager to share one of the things that we've learned about the importance of helping our little friends, the bees. And many people know that we have a decline of bees for a number of reasons. But one of the things homeowners can do is to actually keep bees. And I mean bees without stingers, so don't be concerned about getting stung by these bees. And I'm going to tell you about 2 types of bees. And what we do is we actually rent our bees. And that means that I have a dear friend who's doing this now as a commercial business who rents us these bee blocks. And this one happens to be mason bees. We do those early in the year. And then up here in this one we have the leafcutter bees. So there's 2 different types of bees that you can rent, and you're renting basically the little cocoons. They come in the bee block. They come in a little tube, in this case with the mason bees. We put the bee block in there in a little house that we keep mounted on the side of the garage in a sunny place. We put the PCB pipe in there, and the little babies are in there, so then they break out. There's a little hole for them. They come out when the weather's just right in the summer. These are in the late spring. And they go fly around the yard, and they do wonderful things for our fruit trees. And then when they're ready, they come back and they start laying their eggs inside this bee block. And before you know it, they've filled it up. Maybe they go in and out 20 times, I think, a piece. They fill it up, and then at a point early in the summer, we take these away. We put them in storage, and then I'm going to mail this back to the bee lady, and she's going to open them up, and then she'll have all the new bees for next year. Meanwhile, the next one is the leaf cutter. So as soon as we take this one out, we get our leaf cutters, and those again go into the little black house, And as soon as the weather's warm enough, and again, these are summer bees, out they fly and they go around, and we call them leaf cutters because that's what they do. They cut up the leaves a little tiny bit, and then they go, we provide them with water and mud, and they build, again, they go back and they build in this bee block, they're going to build their and lay their babies. It's the same kind of process. But meanwhile, they're out and they're pollinating all of our flowers and vegetables, because these are summer bees, so they really do a good job. And we have been so fortunate because our fruit trees and our vegetables, our tomatoes have just been so productive. And I know it's because of the help of our friends, the bees. So if you're going to be an organic gardener, you should be also raising bees. Chickens. So we got 4 girls here. The black one is an Australope. The other 3 are Barred Rocks. The 2 youngest Barred Rocks we just got this fall, and they're, I mean, yeah, they were already big enough to come home and not have to be in an be under lights or kept warm, because we got them just as it was warm enough for them to be okay on their own. The other 2 girls we got on the eve of the election, Obama's second election, so they're already over 8 years old, and they'll stop laying eggs soon. I thought it would be sooner than it is. They still are laying, so at this point we're getting almost 4 eggs a day, which is quite a bit for a household with 2 people. They're super simple. I feed them some scraps from the kitchen. We don't feed them. There's certain things you don't feed them. You don't feed them the seeds of the apple, but they do love apples. Don't feed them avocado, but they love all the lettuce scraps and all the greens. In fact, I feed them all the weeds that I gather out of the garden. So it's actually kind of a joy to pick weeds in the garden and just throw them into the girls. They especially love dandelions. They know what's good for them. They also love worms, so I'll get those out of the worm bin, or slugs, which is great. They'll eat all the slugs that attack my hostas. And the first 2 we named after women senators, first-time women senators. So we've got Tammy Duckworth there, and Macy, who is the senator from Hawaii. And the 2 new ones we named Salt and Pepper because those are kind of personalities they have. The one is very salty, and the other's kind of peppery.
How about Chris? Did you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Yes, I did, Jeremy. Thanks, Pam and Jeremy, for sharing your home with us. I was curious about the battery backup system. Jeremy, did you size that so that it would support your critical loads of your kitchen and office, and would be able to recharge daily during the winter when you're more likely to have a power outage?
It's a small battery pack. The SmartRe has a certain size cabinet that it comes with, so it really is just like 4 kilowatt hours of battery storage, which is not a lot. Kind of depends on when a power outage happens. We've had like 3 or 4, or I don't know. Yeah. Not very many, but we did figure out that it's enough to run our critical loads, which we're just talking about, the kitchen, some lights, and the office, for maybe a half a day or a day, depending on when it happens. And we've seen that happen before. We were the first time we had a power outage, we were in the office, and it was at night, and we looked out and realized, hey, the neighborhood's kind of dark. And so we went outside and realized the power was out. We didn't know it because everything is still working here.
Yeah.
So, those are had we sized it for our daily usage, I think probably 10 or 12 kilowatt hours would have been more appropriate. Yeah, good question. Are you looking at doing backup on your home, or?
Well, I'm actually working with another client who's purchasing a solar system with a battery backup because they have medical equipment, and they have to have their freezer and fridge going, and they also have a hydronic heating system, so they have to keep that going. So they are, having their battery backup attached to the full solar array, which I think is we're looking at a 6.1 kW system. But then we're trying to basically get a big enough battery pack that would go for about 3 days with the critical loads, and then also would be able to charge to some extent and keep up during the winter when it's more likely, that the batteries would be able to recharge even though there's lower sunlight during the winter. So it's an
Were you able
interesting
to,
challenge. It's in Olympia.
yeah, were you able to monitor the usage of those devices?
Yeah,
to
well,
get-
we looked at their we looked at their specs. We didn't monitor it, but it hasn't even been, the system hasn't been installed yet, so there's no. But they did, we did do the calculations on the loads, what they're likely to produce, and then sized it based on the accumulated load.
Yeah, and then of course, you probably you have to size it for December and January. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
When the amount of solar is a lot less. We found
Well,
the
it
sweet
sounds like
spot.
you're on the right track, but it is a challenge here, and we don't have we don't have actual experience with long power outage and trying to power a whole house through that. But some of our customers at this point probably have. We've been installing power walls, and of course you can get a decent amount of kilowatt hours with a couple of those.
Mhm. Yeah, I think for most people, the Powerwall or other large battery backups for homes are probably too expensive still to make sense. But the mass production of batteries for electric vehicles, it's increasing dramatically right now, and the lower cost of solar means that it's will be more within reach in coming years. But this particular customer had a medical requirement that they had to have these critical loads get covered, and that's why we're trying to even though it's going to cost a lot for the system, more than somebody might want to pay right now, given the cost of battery backups overall being pretty high, they're willing to do it because of their medical needs.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, we'll move on to.
Compost is one of the most important things to think about if you want to do organic gardening, and that is because the soil needs to be nourished. It needs to have what we call tilth, which is a component that gives it enough matter so that when you water, it will stay there. It will give it some kind of like the meat in the loaf that you're gonna be able to keep your nutrients in there, and the roots will grow well, and they'll have lots to feed on. So when you make compost, and the other thing about compost is it is a carbon sink. So really, really important that our farms and our gardens do add compost, because we're keeping in the carbon. And if you look at this particular composter, and there's as many types of composters as there are. It's like with my water barrels. We've collected a lot of different kinds over the years, experimented a lot, and it's really made a difference as far as figuring out what's the most practical, what's the easiest to use. And this particular one is a Garden Gourmet, and I just love it because it's so easy. It's right outside the back door. I bring out my vegetable scraps, put them in here. I bring around some chicken chips from the chicken coop. So they've got the fertilizer in here, and then first you make a bed out of those chicken chips, then you add in the beautiful food waste from your kitchen, and then over time get red wiggler worms are what is doing the consumption in here, although compost is always breaking down on its own anyway. But the red wiggler worms make it a lot faster. So if you look in here, you'll see a lot of worms doing their work. And then as we go down, I've got the different layers so that this is the one getting close to being done. This is the secondary one, and then in the bottom I have the one that is just beginning. So lots of food scraps in there. And it's a fabulous, fun thing to do, especially with the kids. Teach them about how things break down, the importance of feeding your vegetables and your soil. And then in the bottom, I actually have a little collector, because when the water comes in and it gets too wet, there's a drain in the very bottom of this one, so the water goes into the bucket, and then I have what is a wonderful liquid fertilizer I can just dump on the plants. This is our rainwater catchment system, and over time we've collected a number of different types of containers. So you'll see the big one here that sits flat against the house we got from the Kent Water District, and then we bought food grade barrels at one point. This is like what they have sake or soda syrup in. And then we bought this one from one of the local guys that does rainwater work. And this has been the latest edition. And at this point, we have a number of other barrels, but we collect enough rainwater in the winter, fill it all up, and then start using it in the beginning of late spring, as the rainwater, as it stops, the garden needs the watering. So we do end up running out of water in about August, maybe mid-August, depending on the season, on the year, how much rain it catches, but or how many times it rains. And then we'll look down at the end, and I'll show you how it comes down off the roof, catches into a filter, which is basically just a pool filter we got at Home Depot. And again, we water the garden. We have a pump on here so that I can pump uphill as well. It's very practical. And then down across the street where we have the water, the street end gardening we do. So again, a lot of water, a lot of garden, and it is just a great thing to not have to take off the city water and pay for additional water.
We're still trying to figure this thing out.
While we're doing that, just want to let you know, this tour will be going on until 1 o'clock. So if you have friends that might be interested, let them know what's going on here at the Northwest Green Building Tour. There are 30 other sites you can visit. So if you haven't had a chance, I think most people were pretty well informed about how this works. But also, if you're interested in more information, there's going to be the Green Building Slam, and that's always fun. It's where they invite 10 people to present in 10 minutes each how they did a green building. So it's builders that can tell you more about how to make, again, your house green. And that's coming up in October 13th and 20th, and you can find more about it on the Northwest Green Building website. Northwest Eco Building Guild.
Thank you.
So, are there other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So
Yeah.
right now we have a Solterra solar system and Outback battery backup. It sounds like you've got a bunch of different solar systems. How did you integrate them all together?
Yeah, we have the Outback system in the garage comes through a sub panel that's in the garage. So it feeds into the main panel through the circuit breaker that feeds that sub panel. And then we have the patio system is a series of microinverters, and they all go into a sub panel, and that feeds into a circuit in the main panel. So our main electric panel has a lot feeding into it and less going out than it used to.
and then of course we're in the business, so a lot of what we did was beta testing, but we did start out with we started out with Sanyo modules on the house when we did our first system, and that was just as the incentive became active in the state of Washington, which unfortunately is no longer, but it did help us pay for that first system. And then the second system, when we were buying made in Washington, which meant that we earned more for producing green energy off the modules that were made at the plant. There was a couple of plants in Washington state. Right now we can still buy from iTech up in Bellingham. So that's pretty exciting. There's now Silfab up in Bellingham. So that's pretty exciting to be able to buy made in Washington. And they all just go into the main inverters, and we don't really have to pay attention to the fact that we've got two different meters, because one's on the battery system in the garage.
Yeah, we have a couple of production meters that were installed for the incentive program. So, and we monitor everything in the house. That's how we know how much we're using. We're using an e-gauge, and that's a whole house monitoring system. So we're monitoring everything that comes in from City Light, and then we're monitoring what we use for space heating, for water heating, the office, the car charging, and what else are we monitoring? Well, I guess then all the solar inputs are monitored separately, so we can measure all of that. So it's really kind of an experimental thing we have going. So for those of you that came in a little later, I guess, well, it's almost 11. Should I just roll around, Stu, do you think?
I would say let's wait like 5 minutes. I have a feeling people may land all at the same time.
Let me see, is there a video I haven't played yet?
I'm on this round.
I don't think I played the food video. Let's see.
Oh, the kitchen one. So this garden has evolved over time. It was originally all junipers out here, the whole front yard. And Jeremy latched his truck to the junipers and tore them out. And then we started putting in beds and planting fruit trees, which are incredibly productive given the small space. But we have apple, pear, crabapple, and plum. And then a beautiful red rhodie, so that's nice. In front of the office here I have my ornamentals, but I have been thinking about doing more edibles. All along the Lord there we have tomatoes, tomatoes, tomatoes. And gets really good, as you can see. This is the afternoon. Sun is over here in the southwest, super intense. So we really can grow anything in this area. Rainwater I get from the rainwater barrels. I just fill up my containers or hook up the hose, and then I just water away and feel very good about using the rainwater. So now I would take you to some of the spots inside the house and see what we've done. So the final project in our home remodel was to do the kitchen, and we did everything with almost everything in here is from recycled products. So that cutting board, the granite countertop we were able to get from reuse. The beautiful Mexican tiles here were also from reuse. And then we bought high efficiency appliances, so they are new. This is the LG line, and this is a convection oven inside here, induction on the top stove. Saves lots of energy, and it's super fast. When you put a pot on there, it boils in seconds. The LG refrigerator is perfect for 2 people. Crammed pretty full. I just got my vegetable delivery today, but that is another energy saver, and it fit in this what is a very small kitchen, almost like a boat. And finally, I have to show you my beautiful artisan tiles. Those are Paula Gill's creations, and she does all kinds of wonderful things. But that was my daffodils.
Does anybody have any questions at this point?
I do.
Oh, good. Who are
It's
you?
Miss Cullen.
Okay.
How do you still have power in the winter?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Good question.
So we are still connected to Seattle City Light. And so when there's no sun, which is at night every day, we still get power from the city. But what we do during the day is that we, in the summer, we overproduce. So in the summer, we're making more power than we're using. And then that will build up credits on our bill. And then in the winter, we use those credits. So that's how we get our power in the winter. It still comes through City Light.
Does that make sense, Kelly?
Then,
You say thank you.
Oh, good. Welcome. So let's see. Tim, did you have a question? Yeah, he's got his hand up.
Oh, let's see.
Let's see. Get him unmuted. So it says ask to unmute. So we ask you.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
Is. Okay.
I love your presentation. We've tried several things. We've got some solar going, and we've tried a couple other things and not been as successful. So I was really curious about the bee rental. How did you come across that? And because my husband even built a little house, and we tried moving them around, and just nothing has ever seemed to really take.
Yeah. So it's real simple. She has quite an ongoing business, and in fact, she's now got a couple of partners. And you just search online for Rent a Bee, Rent Mason Bees,
Okay.
and she'll pop up. Her name is Olivia. And if you need more specifics than that, but that's the way I always tell people, and everybody acts like they found her.
Okay.
So just Rent Mason Bees, and yeah, nice online thing. And she makes it very easy. Normally we used to go to a site like a nursery that she would schedule with, and she'd be there all day, and we go pick up our bees. Now with COVID, we're all shipping them back to her, and
Sure.
she's mailing them to us. And she even put together a really nice little kit this year. So you got the bees, and you got a flower mix that turned out to be very, very helpful, you know, like for attracting bees. And she's a wonderful, you know, she and her crew at this point, like I said, she's had other people join her, but they really do a wonderful job.
RentMasonBees.com.
RentMasonBees.com, Stu
Okay.
says.
And then what was the name of your composter that you really liked?
Oh, that's the Garden Gourmet.
Okay, I did write that down right. Great.
I
Thank you.
believe I have seen those in catalogs since, because it's pretty old, but it's held up really nicely. You know, some of them break down, the plastic's too brittle or whatever. And like we got the ones from the city. I used to be director at Seattle Tilth, and we would do these insane composter events where we'd have like 5 different types of composters people could pick from, and inevitably things came back to us. People just wanted to get rid of those, you know, because they didn't work right. And the Darth Vaders, they look like a Darth Vader helmet you see around town, were very popular for a while, but I just didn't find them to be as practical. We did find the RPMs, the ones made out of recycled plastic. They're just great big round tubes. They were super simple to ship, so we used a lot of those in the day. But we find those fine. Those are the kind you just load them up and leave them to set for a year or so.
Mhm.
So we have a variety of different types, some of which I can harvest, you know, every few months. Others I just leave sit on, you know, working away. So yeah. I think one of the things I always think of when Jeremy talks about the efficiency of the hot water system versus the electric. And that's just basically with the hot water, we say 70% efficient. The solar electric on the garage is now 20% efficient. That just means how much of the sun's energy can you convert into energy? And it's the basic thing is that, you know, you can put a dish of water out on the sidewalk on a sunny day and it'll heat up very quickly. It's a lot more effort to make electricity. So that's basically the difference between efficiency as far as it's what does it take to take the sun's energy and convert it into what we can use, right? Am I saying that right?
More or less, yeah. So when the radiation that we get from the sun when it hits objects, then it basically gets down converted to infrared or heat. So that's the basic concept behind that. So let's see, we got a question here. How did your
Yeah,
wood
that's-
floors react to the radiant heating? Yeah, that's a good question. We didn't really get any shrinkage, and it could be that it was just already so dried out in the house.
Mm.
And we have oak strip flooring that's 3/8 of an inch thick. That was later added at some point, probably in the 30s, I'm guessing, or maybe the 20s, over the original tongue and groove fir flooring, so that heat is coming through an 1.25 inches of wood. Just on that, actually, it's more than that because there's 3/4 inch subfloor below that. So so that heat has to migrate through a lot of wood before it gets to the, before we feel it up there. It takes about, 3 hours for us to really start to feel a difference. But it didn't shrink the wood, so I'm just guessing it because it was already so dry.
And the way we do it, we have it set up on a timer so that the heating system during the winter, hot water starts heating up at like 5 a.m. So when we get up at 7, everything's very cozy. And it does take a little longer to heat up the whole house at the very beginning of the season when we first turn it on. And that's because it's radiant heats the objects. It doesn't heat the air. So it's heating through all the wood and
Yeah, kind of
studs and
the whole floor system warms up and becomes thermal mass. And it just runs at, this level that doesn't change a whole lot throughout the heating season. We do start out with the water temperature lower, and maybe 105 degrees. And then by the time we get to the really cold part of the heating season, we kick it up to like 120. So we are running it at a relatively low temperature. Maybe that's another reason why we don't see a lot of shrinkage, or haven't seen any. It's a pretty low temp system.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm a developer from back east, LEED certified in solar, and I'm in Burien today, and I woke up this morning and I can't see. It's the first morning of my life. I'm in my 60s when there's no morning sun. There's heavy duty particulate matter. It's the outcome of the fires. And so I'm wondering if you know, and I know this is a whole new day, but what's the impact of the particulate matter on the panels?
That's a very timely question, and we actually looked at it. So on a sunny day at this time of year, with when the weather's in the mid to upper 70s, our main system, our 6 kilowatt system on the roof, will be producing excuse me, about 4,800 kilowatts, watts, I'm sorry, about 4,800 watts, full sun, middle of the day. And that's because it's warm, and that's what it normally produces. So a couple of days ago, it was producing 3,600. And then yesterday it was producing 2,300. So you can see that the amount of smoke in the air has really dramatically reduced what the solar produces.
And there have been people on Facebook that have posted their meters down in California, and they've shown absolutely no production, when it was so dark in San Francisco the other day, and it blocks out the sun. Normal air pollution will cut your production by about 20%. So the combination of the darkening of the skies and the pollution is really a disaster for our solar systems.
Got it. Thank you for being so frank and honest.
Yeah.
Well, we're you know, we're all about data and, you know, looking at what things actually do. Fortunately, we don't have very many smoky days, but
Yeah. Thank God this is a rarity. We hope it will be.
it's
But
kind of a repeat of what we had 2 years ago.
yeah.
Very similar amount of smoke in the sky. I think it was a little higher in the sky 2 years ago. This time it's really hugging the ground, but it's a lot of smoke.
Yeah, I have the lights on. I woke up this morning and turned the lights on like it was nighttime here
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
South King County.
It feels like a December day.
Yeah. One of the kids from the Sunrise Group who fight so valiantly for us all to go solar and do it, you know, sensibly, you know, deal with climate change for God's sakes. But she just posted, "This is the first time in my life I've awoken and there's no sun." You know, and it's just the way she said it, it scared the heck out of me, thinking, you know, yeah, all of a sudden there is no sun.
They paved paradise.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the tour, guys.
Yeah. Oh, it's already after 1.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, if there are no more questions, I guess.
Yeah, there was one.
Oh.
It was an energy modeling question.
Oh, okay.
I scrolled down. I think I'm getting back to it.
That's a fabulous program we have. We got it for free.
Oh,
off
here
the
we go. What
internet.
energy modeling program did you use?
Yeah.
Okay. I used a program because this was in 2001 called Energy 10. And this is a program that was originally developed by the US Department of Energy, and it was called DOE2, DOE2. It was the second version of this modeling engine that was clunky. You had to enter everything individually in different places. And so an outfit called the Sustainable Buildings Industry Council created a user-friendly version that had a nice interface that was much more like a spreadsheet where you could just change things. And they also really did a lot of work on modeling windows. I think the person who developed that version of the program was one of those people who really knew all about windows and coatings and what you can do to windows to get them to either reject or save energy. I don't know if Energy 10 is still available. It worked very well for me once I got the model tuned to the original house, which took many tries of, oh, I need to, you know, this has got to be. But the way the model works is that you actually measure every component of every wall and, you know, the roof and whatever's in the floor, and you enter all the components of those different parts of the building in, and then the program, the modeling engine creates tells you what the heat loss is, and it also models what the solar gain is coming in.
Other questions?
Any other questions? All right, well, thanks for showing up, and you're welcome for, let's see, did you work with anyone to help you find any rebate programs? So there was, at the time, there was an energy efficiency rebate for insulation, I believe, and then that got expanded for solar in 2006.
And then the hot water heater.
Oh yeah. So we did get incentives for the solar, but what really got us to purchase that heat pump water heater was City Light sent me an email that said, hey, you can get a heat pump water heater for free. So I thought, well, if it's free and I mess with it and I break it, it won't be a problem. So sure enough, we got a GE Geospring. It's a small, 50 gallon heat pump water heater. We got a $400 factory rebate when we bought it. We did a little online class on how to install it, and then we got a $500 rebate from City Light, and we were able to take that home energy tax credit on it. So we literally did get it for free, and that was probably was one of the more interesting things that we did, because we didn't know if it was going to work well or not. And also we didn't want to freeze the basement with the air coming out of the heat pump, because it literally takes in air and then exhausts air that's about 10 degrees colder. So we ducted that to the outside, and that actually creates some fresh airflow in the house during the winter, which is pretty neat. It does two things. But yeah, there are rebates available for these kinds of things. I'm not familiar with what they all are, but there are websites you can find where they have all the rebates listed. Unfortunately, I don't have one of those in front of me.
And in general, heat pumps are just a very efficient way. And so if you have a hot water tank that's on the fritz, take a look at the heat pumps. Okay.
All righty.
And tomorrow there'll be more tour on Sunday with other homes. I'm not sure how they split us up in half. Some of us went on Saturday and some folks are going on Sunday, but do take a look. Again, the Northwest Eco Building website will tell you about tomorrow's tours.
Well,
So just end the Zoom meeting.
yeah.
Okay. Well, see y'all later. Oh, now it's just us.
Mhm. Good.
Yep.
Okay. Boy, I don't know where those 100 people went, but they weren't with us.
There was 100